When I shared with my friends and family that I was going to be doing a talk tonight, the immediate conversation turned to, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to talk about? I know what I do. For the most part, I help people connect to the world of work, jobs, careers. I haven't launched anything into outer space, and I definitely wouldn't attempt to try to come in here on a ball. When I got the email with the invitation, there was a tagline at the bottom that really tugged at me. It said, you have 18 minutes for the talk of a lifetime. It's an interesting concept, the talk of a lifetime. As a single father, I figured that if I had a chance for the talk of a lifetime, I knew exactly who I would deliver that communication to. It's a matter of what I would say. I'm blessed to have my daughter here with me tonight. So with 15 minutes for the talk of a lifetime, the best I can do is to give you advice. As a father, you think about, thank you. As a father, you think about that advice. I always thought that those conversations, the talk of a lifetime, would have included the discussion I had with her about why her mother and father live in separate households and what the process of a divorce is. I thought as a father, the talk of a lifetime would be the conversation I have with you before you walk down the aisle. The conversation of a lifetime could be the discussion about what our economy in this world is going to look like in the next 20 years. And then it sinks in. On any given day, the conversation of a lifetime for me is a discussion with a single mother with 3 children whose husband walked out in the middle of the night. She has no degree, hasn't worked outside of the home, no employable skill sets, and has no idea how she's going to provide for her family. Right now in the United States, you have 11.3 million people collecting an unemployment check. For me, on any given day, the talk of a lifetime is a discussion with a 65-year-old woman who's homeless, living in her car with 3 dogs, and she has 2 master's degrees. You have to explain to her how she's going to make it for the next 15 years. Thanks to the fact that we're living longer, healthier lives, baby boomers are not retiring. The older generation is staying in the workforce and having to re-enter the workforce, causing a log jam for future generations to assume those jobs. On any given day, the talk of a lifetime could be the conversation with a 20-year-old Marine veteran who watched 3 of his best friends die in battle. He's retired and now has to figure out what he's going to do for work for the next 80 years. Our veterans are the #1 homeless population in this country and the #1 fastest growing. Are you kidding me? For me, the talk of a lifetime comes when I talk to my graduating students who've been out of college now for 2 years and still haven't found a job. If you're doing the math, between the students and the veterans alone, you're looking at 21 million individuals aggressively looking for work. For me, the talk of a lifetime is having a conversation with a young man who's coming out of prison after 8.5 years of being incarcerated and trying to explain to him what he's going to do to make ends meet and provide for his family legitimately. This year alone in the state of California, you'll have 10,000 inmates being released into the system, aggressively looking for work. If you've been keeping track, the discussion that we have tonight is a numbers conversation. And sadly, those numbers don't add up. The idea of workforce and economic development is not a difficult conversation. Jobs, people working, equals the economy. On any given day, the BLS will list that you have 3.7 million open jobs in this country. If you go back and add up the slides that we just went through, you have 80 million people aggressively looking for work. The problem that we have right now is simple. We do not have enough work for the number of people that are looking. When you realize that this is going to be a life of continued competition, the conversation becomes simple. What advice do you give when there's 400 people in line for a job? How did we get here? 50 years ago, we didn't have this problem. We were able to walk in, shake hands, look somebody in the eye. It was a whole different day and age. For every 1 job opening, 5 people applied, and they came from a 5-mile radius of that posting. They walked in the door, they shook a hand, they filled an application by hand, and the process was simple. Then technology advanced. Thanks to a neat little invention called the fax machine and our adventures into outer space, I now get 100 sheets of paper called a resume on my desk, wanting the same job. You have any idea how long it takes to go through 100 resumes? And they're coming from a 100-mile radius of that posting. If you're following along to these trends, you have an idea of what's coming next, because I don't know whether it's a curse or a blessing. Those 3 W's. The World Wide Web, and for the first time in the history of the world, somebody in China and Arizona and New York can see the job I have posted and send a resume. And the line continues to get longer. The irony of the discussion is, if you really think about how people look for work, and you think about how people hire for themselves, the process is completely the opposite. You think about the last time that you had to hire a mechanic, a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer. Did you put an ad up on the internet and wait for somebody to send you a bunch of resumes? Go through them and make that phone call? You did not. You actively went about the process. Right now, active hiring accounts for 95 out of 100 hires. The paper resume accounts for 5 out of 100 hires. And 95 out of 100 people looking for work think that that magical piece of paper is going to be the answer to their question. Technology has shifted and changed the way that we form relationships, the way that we maintain our relationships. And this, as a value, becomes critically important to the advice for the talk of a lifetime. When you think about the nature of the relationship you're trying to create with a job, you have to understand the nature of this relationship. 45 hours a week with a pay plus benefits, so I can go home and get an hour and a half at night scrambled to feed her dinner, help her with homework, and get her to bed before I get up and do it all over again. Let me tell you folks right now, we are married to our jobs. And before I take out my wallet and decide to pay you every day on a regular basis, you better believe that there needs to be some value to my understanding that you're going to make sure that I survive and that my business continues to exist. Inevitably, if you start to think about the parallel between looking for a job and looking for a mate in life, the irony is that they're 90% parallel psychologically and physiologically. So you go through the history of how we used to be able to find a date. You know, the modern technologies of being able to ask a person out face to face, heart pounding in your chest. And then where did that technology evolve to? Handing a piece of paper to my best friend so he could run over so that cute little girl could check the box that says, yes, of course, there is no or maybe. Come on now. Then you think about the evolution of that technology to a personal ad. And I know everybody in this room and everybody out there watching has taken a look at those personal ads. Men seeking women, women seeking men. And if we're on a budget, you consolidate it. SWMGRNEYS, seeking. And the idea was simple. You'd read the ad and look at it and say, that's the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. You know what that technology is called today? It's called a job posting. Text 1.0, print on paper. And everybody in the world has to read that description, look at it, and go, ooh, that's the one right there. And wait. Thanks to modern technology with tools like Facebook and LinkedIn, we've created an entire different environment called connections. Human beings that know who I am and what I do, that can verify and vilify my background, skills, and experience, and at the same time, I theirs. They don't need my resume. They don't need an interview. They call me because they know the help that I offer to the world, and I them. It's become an entirely different environment of network. Network. Wow. Network. That magical word that spawned all of this. I'll tell you right now, another irony. The term social networking has existed for the last 50 years. We just seem to get it confused now with social media. The definition of social networking has nothing to do with a computer. It's the ability to walk up to a human being, shake their hand, and have a conversation. God forbid it's socially networking. Too hard. 394 friends on Facebook and nobody to have lunch with. So if I have 5 minutes to give this little one the advice that I hope will take her for the next 20 years. It's not too hard. The first piece of advice I'm going to give you is make sure you show up. Get out of bed and show up. When you do decide to show up, it helps tremendously if you know what you want to do. Have a focus in your path. Believe that you were put on this earth to do something better and follow the joys that you have in your heart. And get up every day and fight to make that happen. When you start to put the next bullet into perspective, I actually went through a run-through on this around my mom. And the actual statement that came out of my mouth was that my parents got the next bullet wrong. And of course, she yelled at me afterwards very clearly explaining that she didn't get it wrong. So I want to make sure that I correct myself to the understanding that generationally we grew up with an understanding that it's about who you know. It's all about who you know. Well, I'll tell you, I know a guy that can get me into Disneyland, but it really doesn't matter if he doesn't get me into Disneyland. So inevitably, it does matter who you know. But more importantly, they have to pick you. I don't care if you know a person that can get you into Disneyland with a set of tickets. I care if they choose you. I don't care if you know the person that works within that company. I care if they choose you. I don't care if you know the person that's holding the wallet. I care if they choose to give it to you. And inevitably, when you think about how people are given their station in life, science has already taught us this. Human beings, strangely enough, are not looking to add problems to their plates. We're on a journey for solutions. We want to have our problems removed. What we're looking for is help. We don't need help, folks. We are the help. We live in a world that's addicted to connecting to people all over the face of the planet, and we don't know 5 neighbors to the right or 5 neighbors to the left of where we live right now. Who they are, what they do, and what they offer to the universe. And I again challenge every single person in this room. 5 to the right and 5 to the left. Maybe sitting right next to you. Inherently, you have one shot to understand what makes this world go round. It's not your iTouch. It's not your laptop computer. It's what you're looking at right there. People. People hire people. People connect with people. People help people. We have become a society that has forgotten how to connect with our neighbors. Show up. And remember, inevitably, no man is alone who has friends. 5 neighbors to the right, 5 neighbors to the left. Who they are, what they do, what they offer to the universe, and do they know who you are and what you do? I challenge you. Thank you. Give a wave.